Peace, good evening. I'd like to welcome you back to a wonderful edition of the Foul Playland. As always, I am Sir Foul Player of Brooklyn, coming at you live from the East Coast of the United States of America, so called. Wanted to talk about more politics and other stuff as it comes along. I use the headline or the title of this video to draw people into political conversations. But uh, in terms of like some news that's happening, I'll lead with that. Like, since I don't have many people here now, there was a story that came out today, or an event that happened today, where Trump had a powwow or a meeting, a roundtable with some conservative media members, in addition to some of his presidential staff like Marco Rubio, Lutnick, Pam Bondi, Christine Noem. And it was regarding a topic that I covered probably yesterday, which is Antifa. If you guys aren't familiar with Antifa, they are a group of terroristic, liberal, leftist lunatics who usually disrupt free speech by way of using violence, by way of shouting over people, and they also take part in terroristic acts as far as doing this with and planning out these maneuvers in which they conduct largely in the Portland area. You have a lot of them. You have a lot of them here in New York too, my hometown. But they have been a topic of debate in the sense that a lot of times when you ask somebody, when the name Antifa is brought up with a lot of people who maybe don't like Trump, or a lot of people who are liberals, or a lot of people who defend liberals, they'll tell you that Antifa is not a real thing, that it's not an organization, that it's not they have no leadership, so that they can't be real. Like, it's just a lot of BS, weasel definitions like the left likes to do, where they try to change up like what you're discussing as you're trying to discuss something. Like, if you say, oh well, Antifa is this large group, like, no, it's technically not a group because they don't have a headquarters, like something stupid like that. Like, um, things that will draw you away from the point that you're trying to discuss. And that's something that the liberal left, or the people that defend the left, usually employ, like try to get you stuck on trying to define a word or BS. But you have that same thing when it comes to their conversations in regards to Antifa, where they'll say it's not a real thing, or it's just a concept. In And I brought this up in the past, where even um, ex-president Joe Biden, or ex-resident Joe Biden, in his 2020 debate with Donald Trump, said the same thing, that Antifa wasn't a real thing, and that they were just a concept, which a lot of people now are becoming aware of what Antifa is, and what the and more importantly, that the liberal left lunatics are more than capable than conducting violence. A lot of times in the past like 10 years or so, it's been made to seem that the only people that could conduct violence is the conservative right, because they're fueled by racism, like according to people that can't have a spirited debate, or don't like to talk these things through. Peace, Manuel Castro. Thank you for coming. I'm not sure what your comment says though, but they employ the tactic of saying that a group like Antifa doesn't exist. But I've seen it firsthand, or like they'll basically make it seem like the liberal left doesn't employ violence under any circumstance, but you're now getting a rude awakening by the American people and the world at large that the lunatic liberal left is more than capable of conducting violence, not in conducting or taking the effort to assassinate the late Charlie Kirk, a conservative speaker, but also in getting coverage from the media and Democrat politicians at large, in which they'll say stuff like what Joe Biden said in that 2020 debate stage, where Antifa didn't exist. There's really no coverage in the news or in the regular media when the liberal left lunatics do conduct violence, and that's been a standard that's been employed probably in the last 10 years. Some people say during the summer of love in 2020 with the George Floyd riots, but it's really been since Donald Trump was about to take office, from that point when he was about to take office till 2025, the year that we're in now, in which, since the liberal left is opposed to Donald Trump, they've almost gotten a pass by the media, which is also opposed to Donald Trump. Almost every bit of the media is opposed to Donald Trump, including Fox. But they almost get a free pass, and that's, they try to conduct a lot of cognitive dissidence when it comes to the actions of, or the bad behavior that's standard practice for the liberal left lunatics. And the celebration of Charlie Kirk's assassination, for example, I mean, that's something that I've seen here on YouTube, all over the place, and I'm totally for free speech. I believe all speech should be free, even speech that's violent, speech that's racist. And this is coming from a quote unquote minority Puerto Rican from New York. I think all speech should be free speech and should be allowed. And that also goes to big tech companies. But with Antifa, I'm glad that one thing that Trump has a very good talent for is to give exposure to certain issues where you almost have to talk about them by his sheer mentioning the issue. And in this case is Antifa. Meme. I hope you're doing well. I don't know if I pronounced your name right. Yeah, it's Meme. How are you doing? Thank you for coming through. But Trump has a way of, especially now, or pretty much since he left office, or since he got screwed on the 2020 election. I mean, something that I want to cover on this channel a lot, but every time I bring it up, it seems like my numbers go down as I'm speaking about it. The 2020 election wasn't on the up and up, but I'll talk about the issue at hand. Since that point, a lot of things that Trump has spoken of are, whether they're covered up by the media or not, it just gets the conversation going, so for instance, like when Joe Biden was the president, the liberal media talked about the border, or had the same talking points in defense of Joe Biden's open border policy. They would say that there is no issue at the border and there is no migrant invasion. But here I am living in the tri-state area, going into New York almost every day, and I see nothing but migrants that were pouring into the country during that time period. But the media wasn't covering a migrant crisis pretty much up until the point, up until late 2023, maybe 2024 even. The biggest human trafficking operation in the history of mankind was taking place at our southern border, and the media chose not to cover it. But the only reason that there were stories in regards to that was because Trump's constant bringing it up, where the media was getting out there and covering the stories in contention of Trump, or saying that Trump was wrong and that there was no border crisis, and it's the same thing with and I consider that a a really good mechanism to get the public to talking about certain things by Trump just bringing it up, because a lot of people's reaction, including the media that hates Trump, is to basically say that he's wrong or he's lying, and the media right now is ineffective. Most of you guys that are listening to me probably don't listen to the mainstream media any longer. But the fact that Trump brings up these things like Antifa, it gets people to talking about it and to say, oh, well, he's wrong, or, gets other people to say, finally, somebody's speaking about this issue, this Antifa issue, because it's affecting the area where I live, i.e. Portland. Portland right now is under the Antifa siege as we speak. And if you don't believe me, I mean, go look at any of the ICE protests that are happening in Portland. God damn, a skunk just sprayed outside my house. And you'll see that a lot of these protesters, like I said yesterday in my live stream, all have the same outfits, same black fatigue, like fatigue pants, and the same tear gas mask, brand new, with pink filters, and that's, you could even go to other states that are having ICE protests currently, like Illinois, and you'll see the same thing where these liberal left, smelly, unwashed, unemployed individuals are going to these protests, and they have the same signs, they have the same MO as how they operate, they have the same uniform, like all black, battle dress pants and shirts, all new goggles, gas masks, and these are some of the these are people that don't have access to money if you were on a personal level, because most of them don't work. And to anybody that contend if they work or not, I mean, if they're at a protest all the time, I mean, then they can't be working simultaneously. But this and these are points that Trump brings up as well, as far as like the fact that groups like Antifa are financed by darker entities that are unknown at this time. So I think the fact that Trump doing that meeting today, or that roundtable in which they discussed Antifa, it's good, like, for the American people to have this conversation. He's stated that he wants to make Antifa designate them as a violent terrorist organization, which I agree with. And hopefully they really get something on the way in trying to clear our Antifa radical left problem up in this country. We are bad enough that we have to contend with people who, because they dislike Trump, are more than willing to try to silence you. Here on YouTube, I go on panels all the time, and a lot of times, if they're discussing politics, like, they won't let me on because they know my perspective. Channels that I'm okay with or cool with, will, if they see that I'm lingering in the chat or whatnot, they know that I don't appreciate the last administration, and they know I don't appreciate anything that the liberal left stands for. Let me make sure my audio is on. Don't appreciate the last. Yeah, it's on. God, my voice is annoying. But they take the tactic of either A, not letting me on outright, or B, when I go onto these panels, they do similar to like what Antifa does, but on the internet, like where they'll shut me down, change the conversation, try to silence me or boot me from having a regular discourse or regular conversations. And that's nothing, hopefully, that I think could be rectified immediately, in which people are willing to, have regular conversations about politics like I used to do in the 90s and even in the 2000s. It was normal, like, to talk about certain things, like including politics, and not have some shithead call you a racist just because you don't want Joe Biden or Kamala Harris to become the president. And hopefully we get back to that. But I think the best way to get back to a point where, you know, shutting down conservatives from speaking, which happens often. I don't see many venues in which liberals are not allowed to speak, even on YouTube. I've seen liberals that say vile shit on YouTube against conservatives or Trump or what have you. And it seems like they get ticked up by the algorithm, in addition to the fact that they get to retain their status on YouTube. Like they don't get booted off the platform. Conservatives, by and large, were getting booted off the platform, including Donald Trump, or like where he was booted from Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Um, and it's all because everything that comes from conservatives is automatically labeled as violent. Like people say that having an opposition to you know, illegal migration is equivalent to violent speech or violence. And you know, violence could, like, according to liberal lunatics, should be answered with violence, you know, like, and that's how they behave. But with eliminating these Antifa brown shirt goons from the conversation, I'm hoping that, you know, we could get to a point where publicly, you know, conservatives could show up and discuss things out in the open and not have to have security, and or not have to fear assassination like a Charlie Kirk, or not have to be exposed to physical violence like the and there were many people that suffered through physical violence at the hands of Antifa and the lunatic left that were actually in this meeting or roundtable meeting with Trump earlier this afternoon. You know, you had a couple of, like, Andy No, I think his name is NGO. I followed him on Twitter, and he's actually been there's been attempts on his life many times in the city of Portland by these Antifa lunatics. You know, they're known to dox people, and that's not right. You know, I think a lot of people chuckle when violence happens to conservatives, or when censoring happens to conservatives, or that, you know, people will make excuses for it. Well, it is what it is, or you know, he should have not been there. You know, you shouldn't be talking that kind of stuff if you don't want to get assassinated. Like, it's just people have entered into full retardation in the 2020s, and I hope for mankind's sake that we could pump the brakes on a lot of the attempted forceful silencing that happens by lunatic left and people that defend the liberals, you know, because it's standard practice for them. I mean, I've had people on my channel like to discuss these things, and they'll, like, on my own channel, like, well, like, you know, I extend the an invitation for people to talk and, like, have a regular discussion, and where people will just constantly cut me off, or like repeat the same words over and over again, like in an attempt to, you know, try to silence a discussion. And it's whack, you know, like, it's something that I think people are very comfortable with how standards are on the internet, in addition to the fact that there's also the standard of silencing conservatives by any way, like, get the hell, my cat's like bugging me, by in where standard which I live in today, or conservatives live in nowadays, where they're silenced by force or by way of bad behavior, i.e., like, you know, repeating oneself over and over. And you know, I hope we could I hope that that kind of behavior gets played out, you know, or it's just something that people will try to correct when they see others partaking in it. And I think when it comes to the physical violence, that happens against conservatives, like on the streets, they look no further than like groups like Antifa to get mobs riveted up. Antifa, by and large, are cowards. They only operate in packs. I mean, if you look at them, like when they don't have masks, they're usually pudgy, weak, or skinny, like transformer type men. Like just pussy. And but when you have a pack of like 20 people like that, it's a lot to take on, regardless of how weak these people are physically. Or it's tough to contend against like weaponry, which these people are known to employ. But also, like, at times, there may be people that are just in attendance and listening to people that they may not agree with, like a conservative, and you'll have a certain members of Antifa that get mobs, fired up. And once you get a mob fired up, I mean, like, where's the discussion happening in those circumstances? So yes, I totally agree with the conversations that are happening now. Whether you believe Antifa is real or not, I'm glad that people are finally talking about it out in the open, and I could thank President Trump for bringing that conversation out into the forefront. And hopefully they follow through with cracking down on the lunatic, liberal Antifa violent mob. Now I want to get into the main, the title of this video, in why, in the fact that Joe Biden and or Kamala Harris have nothing on the 45th through 47th president of the United States. Hopefully he's the 48th president of the United States, Donald Trump. It's when I think, and I thought about that today, because Donald Trump was actually front and center at this Antifa roundtable discussion today. Early last week, Timu Obama, aka Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democrats in Congress, was saying that Trump was hiding from the media and wasn't taking questions because of the government shutdown that we're in day 8 right now, if I believe. That he was trying to hide from the press because he didn't want to address the government shutdown. But since that point, I mean, I think Trump has probably had 3 or 4 instances in which he's taking questions from reporters. And you look back at Joe Biden, I think for at least, I think Joe Biden only had 1 meeting with his staff the whole time he was the president. How often did Joe Biden take questions from the press? Never. Never, never, never. I mean, this is all, like, not only when he was the president or the resident by way of deception, but also when Joe Biden was running for president. I remember Trump and a lot of his supporters were calling him Basement Biden, or Basement Joe, Sleepy Joe, and that's because there was no presence of Joe Biden out in the public, and this is why he was running for the presidency. And in spite of that, somehow Joe Biden received 12 million more votes than Obama, when Obama was a really popular president, from what I mean, really popular candidate when he was running, probably the most popular candidate when he was running. Yet somehow Joe Biden received 12 million more votes than Obama, and that just shows you my previous point in the fact that I think the 2020 election was not on the up and up. But in terms of accessibility, when it comes to the difference between Trump and Joe Biden, I mean, it's not even close. And that you could throw Kamala Harris into that same fray, somebody who had aspirations to run for the presidency and ultimately did run for the presidency. how often was Kamala Harris front and center taking questions or doing press? It was pretty much none. And both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, when they did get in front of the cameras, whether that be, I mean, Joe Biden has probably done one bit of press or one public appearance where he's actually spoken since he's left office. And he sounded like a blithering idiot, like he did most of the times when he was in office. But you also have Kamala Harris, a woman who also suffered from the same dilemma, in which she couldn't express herself without sounding like a damn fool. You know, somebody who's not really well spoken, who at times seemed like a drunk when she would speak. And in that note, too, recently she actually did an appearance and she sounded drunk then, too. But, the fact that Trump, whether you like him or not, is actually more than accessible, like to the media. It's night far more ensuring, like to the American public, as to what's happening um, in this country. And whether you agree with him or not, I mean, I agree with much of what Trump's doing. In terms of what you have Biden that allowed 28 million or more immigrants, illegal immigrants, into the country, whereas Trump is taking a stance against illegal immigration, even in his first term, or didn't, or wanted to build the wall, and it was the Democrats that stopped him in his first term from building the wall, even though it was $5 billion, according to him, to complete the border wall in his image, or his, like, how he wanted to do it. Um, but that was stopped at every turn. It was demonized, in fact, like by the liberal left, by the media at large. They looked at building a wall like as a as some sort of fascist move. But um, you know, most people like that hated Trump, while Joe Biden was the president, didn't want to weren't candid about like things that Joe Biden was doing that was negatively affecting the country. You also have the mandate pushing that the Biden administration was very happy to enforce, and I, as a so-called minority, I come from a uh, subset group in America that was the most vaccine hesitant. Um, when you look at the statistics, there were many studies done that the biggest vaccine hesitant community were actually black people. Yet these were the people that were forced into taking it in spite of their apprehensions to an unknown component that was pretty much forcefully put upon them. These are people that couldn't quit their jobs if their jobs were asking them to cave into the mandate and take the jab. It's not like there's not many black and Latin yuppies that could go move elsewhere, or rely on some sort of savings or trust fund that they're or inheritance that their parents leave them. No, like a lot of them, a lot of people I know, like personally, were very hesitant of taking the jab, but were forced to because they thought that it risked their employment. And I can't really and a lot of these people, like some of them, were very big on um, hating on Trump, or but a lot of them, were cool with the concept of a vaccine, but they weren't cool with the concept of having to forcefully take it. And you also had a lot of idiots that were that looked at like the jab as a communal wafer for their religion of liberalism. Like that was the holy sacrament for a little while. Now all of a sudden you don't you bet how often do you see on a day-to-day basis or regular basis in 2025, where people are saying that they got to take a booster, or where they got COVID, so they got to go get a shot to rectify it. That doesn't happen pretty much at all in 2025. Yet some of the liberal left lunatics forget, or some of the people that defend liberals forget that this was something that for many of the population in America and a lot of the Western world, it was almost like a forced requisite, especially for those of little means like myself and many of the people that I know. And, you know, I picture a world in which Joe Biden would have ran for president and won, or if, God forbid, Kamala would have won, in which some, you know, glorified fever would somehow pop up in the media, and where another jab was created, and maybe the mandates under a second Joe Biden administration would have been a lot more harder to evade or to not have to submit to. So that's something that I could appreciate this administration for, you know, and for some of these liberal lunatics that look at the jab as the holy sacrament, they also tend to forget that for probably like 3 weeks, there were people that were saying that they're not going to take the Trump vaccine because it was actually under the Trump administration where Operation Warp Speed was conducted, and that cut through a lot of the legal red tape that normally vaccine makers have to deal with by testing their vaccines and whatnot. But Operation Warp Speed enabled them to get fast approval for a COVID vaccine, and that brought the vaccine to that ended up bringing the vaccine to the American people in a matter of months. Again, although I don't agree with the jab, but I do remember vividly that a lot of the liberal left was saying that they're not going to take that Trump vaccine, and then 3 weeks later, they were pretty much saying that you should be locked up in some sort of camp, or shouldn't be able to, like, if you didn't take the jab, or people like Jimmy Kimmel like saying that people that weren't taking the jab shouldn't be able to use the medical facilities or hospitals should they get sick during the COVID era. A lot of people want to forget about the COVID era. I mean, like, it's something that, you know, I think is very important to me. I also have noticed that there's a lot of people that took the jab that aren't the same in 2025, you know, that took the jab during the COVID era, you know, and it's only a few months ago, if you think about it. I mean, the COVID era was probably, you know, 36 months ago in the grand scheme of things, 48 months ago. But people want you to play the same cognitive dissonance game that the liberal left do and forget all the bad things that came by way of the liberals or Democrats falling in line when it came to pushing the jab. Because there's no bigger representation of fascism in America than the liberal left lunatics. They walk hand in hand with corporations, i.e. Pfizer, pushing the same message. They are more than willing to silence and censor. They're more than willing to put their brown shirts like Antifa on you and conduct violence. So they are the true representation of fascism in the Western world today, liberals. But going back to the difference of this administration compared to the last administration, in spite of the fact that Trump is outright pushing for Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve to lower the interest rates, you still have a booming economy, like, you know, and it was something that the Biden administration was purporting or saying that they had some of the one of the best economies going, and that's only because stocks were going up in and that's it. That was the sign of a good economy for them. Not factoring the prices were going up for groceries and everything else, like for you to exist. Um, Having said that, though, Trump's economy is a far better economy, in spite of the fact that he's contending against a um, really hard-headed Jerome Powell and Federal Reserve working against his economy's interest. But I mean, I haven't seen much in the way. I don't want to lie to you guys and say I haven't seen much in the way of lower prices across the board. I mean, gas has pretty much stood the same. Whatever it was at its lowest under the Biden administration. Where I live, it was probably like around 299, 290 at its lowest during the Biden administration. It's pretty much retained that same price, about 289, 290 at its lowest. Um, Within the first 10 months or 9 months of the Trump administration. So that's a good thing. Um, but also, the censoring apparatus that was employed under the Biden administration. And this is something that's now been proven, with the Twitter files and with a lot of the exposure that's happened under Trump's FBI, where they've shown actual proof of these government agencies pretty much strong arming social media companies and big tech to censor conservatives. And I don't want to make excuses for big tech and social media companies because they're more than happy to live in a liberal bubble and censor conservatives on their own accord. They didn't need any incentive from the government to do so. But when you have you know, big tech entertainment companies that are already um, hyper liberal by without any motivation, but then you add the fact that they're getting their arms twisted by a radicalized liberal or leftist lunatic government that was um, rampant under the Biden administration. The social media companies caved in. There were a lot of really good social media channels like on YouTube, my favorite app of any app, that were up and running and making really good content leading into the end of the Trump administration, uh, in the beginning of the COVID era, and it seemed like every one of them got eliminated from these platforms all around the same time. So, I mean, conservatives felt like they had no voice for the most part, or they had to operate on, without saying what they really feel or walk on eggshells. And I still feel that way now. I mean, it's not like the grip of the liberal establishment on social media and on big tech has um, been restored to how it was before. I mean, the internet's way whacker than it was even in 2016. I mean, you put in any sort of search on, even on Google, like, and I mean, it just seems like the information is so blah and, not what you want it to be. And I didn't feel that way about the internet, in 2015, 2010. Like, I miss the old internet. But off that tangent, you know, um, I hope that Trump continues to pressure social media and allows even more, candid conversations to take place without regular human beings like you and I to be censored or having to walk on eggshells. But it's better than it was under the Biden administration, without a doubt. But going back to positive things about the Trump administration, the respect that we receive, throughout the world, whether you like Trump or not, I mean, like, the man is effective at being a representation or a leader that other leaders throughout the world fear and respect, and if you think that he's a prick for doing that, I mean, like, you in life, you can't have a nice guy as your boss, you know, or you can't have a nice guy as a home builder, or you can't have a nice guy, or you can't hire anybody on just the basis of they're a good person or nice, and a lot of you sometimes, in a tough world, you gotta have a guy who's a ball buster or a prick, um, who you may not agree with or you may not like, but he's still effective at getting you what's best for you or what you need. And that's what Trump is. I mean, like, I just saw a meeting with him and the leader of Canada. Canada's a big problem for America too. I mean, like, they allow a lot of migration into their country, and subsequently, those people end up in America too. I mean, a lot of Indians enter into Canada, and then they end up in America. They actually had a story of a guy who raped a young lady in England, an Indian man, and he was left England after he had conducted that rape, and then entered into Canada, and they, gave him citizenship. What's to stop that Indian fellow from, walking south from Canada and entering into, New York? So, I mean, nevertheless, I mean, like, maybe that's a problem that Trump can contend with head on in the future. I'm pretty sure he will. But, you know, um, he had a meeting with the Prime Minister of Canada, or the President of Canada, whatever you want to call him. And the guy, was pretty much sucking his nuts in the whole time, and Trump had total control of the interview, and I mean, or the meeting, in addition to taking questions from the press immediately after. It wasn't like anybody from the press was looking to ask this Canadian individual or the Canadian Prime Minister um, what his feelings were on things or what his perspective was. People were largely ignoring him and were largely looking at the apex man in the room, which is the Don Ski. Um, and I rather have somebody who's tough rather than some blithering idiot like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. You know, and it's I think we're living in a good time in the sense that during Trump's presidency, all you had was the media going above and beyond and demonizing Trump. And even I believed a lot of that stuff that the media was reporting back then. But then you had a total morphing of the media when it came to the treatment of a president under Joe Biden, where they were basically giving him no sort of negative press, although there was tons of negative things that were happening under the Biden administration. When you look at the migration crisis that we had, the largest human trafficking operation in the history of mankind. You also had the withdrawal from Afghanistan by the U.S. troops, which went so horribly under Joe Biden for a real stupid reason, for a stupid decision that Joe Biden made, costed the lives of 13 brave U.S. Troops. And how often did, or how much did the media cover that story? Maybe a weekend. Whereas, Billy Bush saying, or leaked Billy Bush Entertainment Tonight interview or whatever it was, in which they said Trump said to grab a girl by her private area. I mean, they still talk about that today. They still talk about fake Russia, um, Trump collusion narrative. I mean, like, there's still people that believe that now, even though that's been proven to be a lie outright. Something that, even though that's been proven to be a narrative that was paid for by the DNC and by the liberals, there's many people that, you know, uh, only flow in a currency of, I just hate Trump, and even if I know something may not be true, I'm gonna run with it because I hate Trump. And that's been largely caused by a radicalized media. But now, um, and back then when Trump was the president the first time, how often did you see combative media or combative individual journalists like Alex Acosta, who would ask Trump questions or and say, like, while he's answering, like, interrupt him or say he's a liar, and you know well, now, you don't see members of the press that are allowed to do that like they were doing before. They never did that under any presidency, but under the Trump presidency, it was something that was commonplace. But one thing that I have noticed because of these actions by the media, in which they chose to overblow Trump negative stories, and then went into 4 years of covering up for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, where nowadays I think people largely have tuned out the mainstream media. So I would attribute that as another notch in the belt of President Donald Trump, where a radicalized media took it upon themselves to start being biased against anything to do with conservatives, because they thought that that would enable Trump or enable a second Trump presidency. To where now, I mean, like, you have really popular news shows, late night shows like Jimmy Kimmel, like, that are being canceled, because they're not profitable. Nobody's listening to them no more. And I consider that a victory. But there are not many people here. I'm going to be ending this stream. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening. I'm hoping that the hated New York Yankees lose. I don't know what the score is, if anybody could tell me. Um, but I can't stand the New York Yankees as a New Yorker. Go Mets, even though the Mets broke my heart this year. But with that, I'm going to take care of some personal stuff, and I hope you guys have a really wonderful rest of your evening. Go outside if you can tonight and look at the glorious moon that's in the skies tonight. I just happened to see it earlier when I was throwing out the trash, and I mean, it's breathtaking. It doesn't even look real. But I would suggest you guys do the same, and you know enjoy the rest of your evening, however you want to do it. But with that, I wish you guys nothing but health, success. Thank you for stepping into the Foul Playland with me. As always, I am Sir Foul Player of Brooklyn, and this is Behold. Peace.